Success is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhi came from a poor family and he had dropped out of the cheapest college he could afford. Mavaji David Joshiji, a Brahmin priest and family friend, advised Gandhi and his family that he should consider law studies in London. On 10th August 1888, Gandhi, aged 18, left Porbandar for Mumbai, then known as Bombay. Upon arrival, he stayed with the local Modbania community whose elders warned him that England would tempt him to compromise his religion and eat and drink in Western ways.
On September 4th, he sailed from Bombay to London, with his brother seeing him off. Gandhi attended University College, London, which is a constituent college of the University of London. At ULC, he learned Jaw and Judgment Twist, which was invited to enroll at Inner Temple with the intention of becoming a barrister. His childhood shyness and self-withdrawal had continued through his teens, and he remained so when he arrived in London. But he joined a public speaking practice group and overcame his handicap to practice law.
Gandhi returned to India in 1915. He brought an international reputation as a leading Indian nationalist theorist and community organizer. Gandhi took leadership of the Congress in 1920 and began escalating demands until on 26 January 1930, the Indian National Congress declared the independence of India. The British did not recognize the declaration, but negotiations ensued, with the Congress taking a role in provincial government in the late 1930s.
Tensions escalated and Gandhi demanded independence in 1942, and British responded by imprisoning him and tens of thousands of other Congress leaders. Meanwhile, the Muslim League did cooperate with Britain and moved against Gandhi's strong opposition to demands for a totally separate Muslim state of Pakistan. In August 1947, the British partitioned the land with India and Pakistan, each achieving independence on terms that Gandhi disapproved of.
After his release from prison for political crimes in 1924, over the second half of the 1920s, Gandhi continued to pursue Swaraj. He pushed through a resolution at the Calcutta Congress in December 1928 calling the British government to grant India dominance status or face a new campaign of non-cooperation with complete independence for the country as its goal.
After his support for the World War I with Indian combat troops in the field of Khilafat movement preserving the role of Caliph in Turkey, followed by a collapse in Muslim support for his leadership, some such as Subhash Chandra Bose and Bhagat Singh questioned his values and non-violent approach. While many Hindu leaders championed a demand for immediate independence, Gandhi revised his own call to a 1-year wait instead of 2.
British did not respond favorably to Gandhi's proposal. British political leaders such as Lord Birkenhead, the Winston Churchill announced opposition to the abuses of Gandhi in the discussion with European diplomats who sympathized with Indian demands. On 31st December 1929, the flag of India was unfurled in Lahore. Gandhi-led Congress celebrated 26 January 1930 as India's Congress as India's Independence Day in Lahore. This day was commemorated by almost every other Indian organization.
Gandhi then launched a new satyagraha against tax on salt in March 1930. Gandhi sent an ultimatum in the form of a polite letter to the Viceroy of India, Lord Irwin, on March 2nd.
They also mentioned in the letter that the Viceroy received a salary over 5,000 times India's average income. British violence, Gandhi promised, was going to be defeated by Indian non-violence.
It was highlighted by the Salt March to Dindi from 12th March to 6th April, where together with 78 volunteers, he marched 388 kilometers from Ahmedabad to Dindi in Gujarat to make salt himself with the declared intention of breaking the salt laws. The march took 25 days to cover 240 miles, with Gandhi speaking to often huge crowds along the way. Thousands of Indians joined him in Delhi. On 5th May, he was interned under regulations dating from 1827 in anticipation of a protest that he had planned. The protest at Dharsana Salt Works on 21st May went ahead without its leader Gandhi.
This went on for hours until some 300 or more protesters had been beaten, many seriously injured, and 2 killed. At no time did they offer any resistance. Gandhi opposed the partition of the Indian subcontinent along religious lines. The Indian National Congress and Gandhi called for the British to quit India. However, the Muslims League India demanded divide to quit India. Gandhi suggested an agreement which required the Congress and the Muslim League to cooperate and attain independence under the provisional government. Thereafter, the questions of the partition could be resolved by plebiscite in the districts with a Muslim majority.
The British reluctantly agreed to grant independence to the people of the Indian subcontinent but accepted Jinnah's proposal of partitioning the land into Pakistan and India. Gandhi was involved in the final negotiations. Gandhi spent the Day of Independence not celebrating the end of the British rule but appealing for peace among his countrymen by fasting and spinning in Calcutta on 15 August 1947. The partition had gripped the Indian subcontinent with religious violence and the streets were filled with corpses. Some writers credit Gandhi's fasting and protest for stopping the religious riots and communal violence.
Gandhi's statements, letters, and life have attracted much political and scholarly analysis of his principles, practices, and beliefs, including what influenced him. Some writers present him as a paragon of ethical living and pacifism, while others present him as a more complex, contradictory, and involving character influenced by his culture and circumstances. Gandhi was a prolific writer. One of Gandhi's earliest publications, Hindu Swaraj, published in Gujarati in 1909, became the intellectual blueprint for India's independence movement. The book was translated into English the next year, with a copyright legend that read, "No rights reserved."
Mahatma Gandhi's life achievement stands unique in political history. He has invented a completely new and humane system for the liberation of war of an oppressed country and has practiced it with the greatest energy and devotion. The moral influence he had on the consciously thinking human being of the entire civilized world will probably be much more lasting than it seems in our time, with its overestimation of brutal violent forces.
Because lasting will only be the work of such statesmen who wake up and strengthen the moral power of their people through their example and educational works. We may all be happy and grateful that destiny gifted us with such an enlightened contemporary, a role model for generations to come. Generations to come will scarce believe that such a one as this walked the earth in flesh and blood.